The first time she wheeled him down the aisle, they didn't hear wedding bells, only laughter. But what they didn't know was that one day, they would owe him everything. The heat clung to the sidewalks of Lexington, South Carolina, like old gossip, thick, unshakable, and always waiting to be stirred. Joanna Raines stepped out of the town courthouse with a paper in her hand and fire in her chest. Her chestnut hair was tied in a loose bun, strands stuck to her flushed cheeks. The marriage license crinkled slightly in her grip as she crossed the square, passing by the diners and farm supply stores with quiet, defiant steps. The ring on her finger glinted in the sun, but not half as bright as the determination in her eyes. People turned. Some just stared. Some whispered. One woman in a floral blouse didn't bother lowering her voice. She could have had any man in town. And she chooses him. Joanna didn't flinch. Not anymore. She'd spent the last 3 months learning how to hold her chin up without it trembling. Across town, in a small bungalow on Crescent Avenue, Daniel Whitaker adjusted the sleeves of his button-up shirt with trembling fingers. His right wrist still jerked a little when he moved too fast, a leftover nerve glitch from the car crash that changed everything. He looked in the mirror. The wheelchair he sat in was old but clean. His face was sharp-jawed, pale, and lined with the quiet skepticism of a man who didn't trust happiness to last. Behind him, his best friend Jake leaned in the doorway, watching. "You sure about this?" Jake asked, voice low. Daniel didn't answer right away. His hands stilled in his lap. "No," he finally said, voice almost too soft to hear. "But I'm sure about her." Jake exhaled. "People are gonna talk." Daniel's expression didn't change. Let them. They met at a bookstore 6 months ago. Joanna had knocked over a stack of poetry books near the wheelchair-accessible ramp, and Daniel had cracked a dry joke that made her laugh out loud. He hadn't flirted. Hadn't tried. That was the first surprise. Joanna, who had been proposed to 4 times before her 30th birthday, didn't know how to respond to someone who just saw her. Daniel read Neruda. Loved baseball. Once rebuilt a radio from scratch just to hear it play Otis Redding. And he never once asked her to feel sorry for him. He was kind in a quiet way, sliding a note across the table at a coffee shop instead of speaking when her tears wouldn't stop. It read, "You don't have to talk. I'm here anyway." She fell for him, hard. Her parents didn't come to the wedding. The ceremony was simple. A rented garden. White folding chairs. Joanna wore pale blue. Daniel wore charcoal gray and didn't hide his chair behind a flower arrangement. They wrote their own vows. But the guests, what few showed, didn't clap with full hands. And some chuckled behind palms when she bent to kiss him. Later, one of Joanna's old friends posted a photo on Facebook captioned, "True love or pity." It went semi-viral in the town Facebook group. Joanna saw it. She closed the laptop. Then she walked to Daniel's room, sat beside him, and said nothing. He didn't look at her. "You don't have to defend me," he muttered. "I'm not defending you," she whispered. "I'm choosing you." But love, no matter how fierce, wasn't always enough to drown out humiliation. In the grocery store, an old pastor from her childhood church asked if she was still playing nurse. At the DMV, the clerk said, "You'll probably be pushing that chair more than pushing a stroller, huh?" Daniel overheard that one. He laughed it off in front of her. But in private, he pulled away. Didn't want to be touched. Wouldn't let her help him out of bed one morning. "Joanna, I think maybe I tricked you into thinking I'm enough." "Don't you ever say that to me again," she said, voice trembling. "You could have had someone normal." "What's normal? Cruel? Able-bodied and empty." Her eyes blazed. "You see me, Daniel. And I see you. All of you. So don't you dare tell me who I'm allowed to love." But that night, when she curled into bed beside him, he turned his back. He was afraid. Of dragging her down. Of being a burden she'd one day resent. Of the kind of pain you can't see on MRIs, the ache of never being enough. Have you ever loved someone others thought was less than? What did it cost you? Let us know in the comments. Your story might help someone feel less alone. It happened on a Sunday, because, of course, life always split wide open when you least expected it. The sky was heavy with humidity, and the town's annual Founders Festival filled the square with the smell of kettle corn, barbecue, and spilled beer. Children shrieked near the bouncy castles. A brass band struggled to stay in tune. Everyone who was anyone in Lexington was there. Joanna hadn't planned to go. But Daniel had insisted. "They already think you married a broken man," he said dryly that morning. "Might as well give them something to stare at." She rolled her eyes, but something in his tone had changed. A dry bite, sure, but less bitterness. Almost strength? So she pushed his chair into the crowd, shoulders squared, her sundress catching the breeze. Daniel wore his brave's cap low over his eyes. They drew eyes. People whispered. Someone laughed. Same old. Until the moment everything shattered. They were passing the bandstand when it happened. A panicked scream. Then another. "He's choking. Somebody help." A cluster of people had formed near the popcorn stand. A boy, no older than 6, was turning purple, his hands clutching his throat. His mother was screaming, helpless. The town froze. No one moved. Daniel's eyes sharpened. "Joe," he said sharply. "Unbuckle the brakes. Now." "What?" "Now." Joanna obeyed on instinct. Daniel gripped the wheels and turned hard, rolling fast toward the crowd. People moved without thinking, parting like water. His chair bumped through the grass. Someone tried to stop him. He brushed them off. He reached the boy just as the child crumpled to the ground. He threw himself out of the chair. Daniel's body hit the dirt with a sickening thud. He dragged himself forward on his elbows scarred and calloused from therapy, from years of knowing how to move anyway. His shirt tore. His wrist bled. Still he reached the boy, propped him sideways, and began the modified Heimlich maneuver he'd practiced in rehab but never thought he'd need again. 1, 2, 3. The boy's chest convulsed. Then a sick wet sound, and a wad of candy popped from his throat. He gasped, cried, breathed. The crowd exhaled like one body. The boy's mother dropped to her knees, sobbing, grabbing Daniel's arms, saying thank you over and over. Daniel's hands trembled. He didn't speak. Joanna stood frozen, one hand over her mouth. Her heart was pounding so hard she felt it in her ears. The sheriff arrived minutes later. The boy was taken to the medic tent. A few people clapped. Then more did. Then the crowd roared. Daniel didn't return to his wheelchair right away. He stayed on the ground, chest heaving, as people came and stared at him differently, not with pity, not with scorn, with awe. Later in the car, silence stretched between Joanna and Daniel like thread pulled too tight. She looked at him. His shirt was ripped. There was dirt on his face. He was bleeding from the elbow. But he was smiling, barely. The kind of smile you don't make for photos. The kind that just shows up when your soul exhales. "You could have gotten hurt," she whispered. "I am hurt," he said. "Every day." She turned her face away. "That was the bravest thing I've ever seen." He was quiet for a long time. Then, "Do you still love me even when I'm not doing anything brave?" "Daniel," her voice cracked. "Because I've been thinking. All this time, I kept wondering if you were settling. But maybe I was." She turned back sharply. "Settling for what?" "For someone who only saw my scars." He swallowed. "But you don't. Do you?" She shook her head. "No. I see the man who dove face first into the dirt to save a child." Daniel leaned his head back against the car window, eyes closed. For the first time in weeks, his breathing was easy. The video went viral. Someone in the crowd had filmed it, the man in the wheelchair flinging himself onto the ground to save a choking boy. The footage was shaky, but the act was clear. Over 2 million views in 24 hours. Local news cold. Then national. His name trended on Twitter. Hero in wheels. Paralyzed man saves child in stunning rescue. People who had whispered behind their hands now knocked on Joanna's door with casseroles. One woman sobbed while holding Daniel's hand and said, "I'm sorry. I didn't know who you were." Joanna said nothing. She didn't have to. The internet crowned Daniel a hero, but heroism comes with pressure, and pressure, Joanna learned, can crack even the strongest foundations. In the weeks following the festival, Daniel received invitations for morning shows, motivational podcasts, even a veterans charity group who assumed he was ex-military. He wasn't. Just a former electrical engineer with bad luck and a worse curve on a rainy night. Strangers offered money. One company wanted to sponsor a GoFundMe. Rebuild the hero's house, they called it. Joanna should have been thrilled. This was what they'd hoped for: acceptance, respect. But something shifted in Daniel. He stopped sleeping. At first it was subtle. He stayed up answering emails or scrolling through comments, lost in a spiral of praise that didn't feel real to him. This man is incredible. He's proof that disability doesn't mean weakness. I wish I had his courage. But instead of soaking it in, Daniel winced every time he read them. They don't know me, he muttered one night. Joanna walked into the living room, folding her arms. They're not wrong either. They're worshipping something I did in 10 seconds. Not who I am every other hour of the day. She sat on the armrest of his chair. So? Maybe the 10 seconds matter. You know what they'll say when the attention dies, he snapped suddenly. They'll go back to whispering about the poor girl who married the guy with dead legs. Joanna froze. That's not fair, she said softly. Neither is life, he replied. You're learning that. She didn't speak to him for hours after that. Not because of what he said, but because part of her, some weak haunted corner of her heart, was afraid he might be right. A week later, Joanna had lunch with her cousin, Marissa. The same cousin who had asked if Daniel would ever be able to satisfy a woman like you. This time, she pretended to be supportive. Sort of. It's sweet you defending him, Marissa said, dabbing her mouth with a napkin. But be honest, if he wasn't in that chair, would he still be your choice? Joanna didn't answer. Marissa leaned in. You're too beautiful to spend your life being someone's caretaker. That night, Joanna went home and cried alone in the bathroom, guilt flooding her. Why didn't I say something? Why didn't I scream? She heard Daniel's voice through the door later. You okay? She splashed water on her face and lied. Yeah. Fame brought them admiration, yes, but also scrutiny. Some people accused Joanna of exploiting her husband's story. Others questioned Daniel's motives. Was it a stunt? Real heroes don't need cameras. It only fed Daniel's insecurities. I didn't save that kid for clout. I know. Then why do I feel like I have to keep proving something? Joanna didn't have an answer. Because she had started wondering the same. Not about his bravery, but about them. What if their love had been born out of defiance, not destiny? What if the world's rejection had made them cling to each other harder, but not deeper? One night, Daniel said the words that cracked her open. Maybe you were right to marry me. But maybe I was wrong to let you. She stood there stunned, hands trembling. Why would you say that? Because you deserve a man who can carry you when life gets heavy. Not one you have to push. The silence that followed was cruel. Deafening. You think love is only about legs, she whispered. He didn't answer. And that was worse than anything he could have said. Have you ever questioned something you once believed in with your whole heart? Tell us below. What made you doubt, and what helped you hold on? A week after the silence, fate gave them what neither had the courage to ask for. A storm. A hurricane warning shuttered the South Carolina coastline. Roads flooded fast, especially in smaller towns like Lexington. The news anchors barked. Stay off the roads. Prepare to shelter in place. Joanna stocked canned goods and batteries, half listening, half numb. Daniel didn't ask if she wanted to ride it out with her parents or a friend. He already knew she wouldn't. There was nowhere else she'd go. But the emotional storm? That was already here. By nightfall, the wind howled like a choir of wolves. Rain smacked the windows sideways. The power flickered once, then surrendered. Darkness swallowed the house. Daniel lit a candle on the coffee table. The flame danced over his sharp features. His hand trembled as he struck another match. Joanna brought a blanket and sat on the floor, knees drawn to her chest. She didn't face him. He didn't face her either. You think we'll be okay? She asked after a long silence. Physically? Probably. Emotionally? He gave a humorless laugh. I wouldn't bet on it. Joanna's chest tightened. They were stuck together, 2 broken hearts in a house too quiet. No cell service. No distractions. Just candlelight, the hum of wind, and the weight of unsaid things. Daniel finally said it. I heard you crying the other night. Joanna's breath caught. She turned away. Was it something I said? Silence. Or something someone else did? Still silence. Please, Joe. Her name, soft, pleading, landed harder than any accusation. She swallowed. It was Marissa. What did she say? She asked if I was still your wife or just your caretaker. He flinched, but nodded. I've wondered the same. Her head snapped toward him. Don't you dare compare your fears to hers. She's cruel. You're just scared. Aren't you? Joanna hesitated, then whispered. Every damn day. The candle flickered. There's something that happens when 2 people stop pretending, a rawness, like skin exposed after a sunburn. Daniel shifted his chair closer to her. The wheels creaked softly. You remember what I said that night? About not being enough. How could I forget? He looked down. What I didn't tell you was. I almost called it off. The wedding. She blinked. What? I sat outside the courthouse in Jake's truck. Just thinking. Wondering if I was signing you up for a lifetime of regret. Joanna's voice cracked. And now? He looked at her. Really looked. Now I think, maybe I was trying to protect myself, not you. The storm outside surged louder, rattling the windows. But in that room, something softened. Joanna crawled toward his chair, sat beside his leg, and rested her head on his knee. He reached down, brushing a lock of hair behind her ear. You didn't marry me because you pitied me, did you? God, no. Then why? She looked up, tears in her eyes. Because when I'm with you, I'm not afraid to be seen. Daniel's throat worked hard to swallow. Even like this. Especially like this. They stayed there for hours. No lightning. No internet. No distractions. Just 2 souls finally choosing stillness over running. By midnight, Joanna had fallen asleep, her head resting on Daniel's lap. He sat in his chair, staring into the candle's last flame, one hand protectively on her shoulder. He whispered into the dark. I love you. She didn't respond. But the corners of her lips curled in sleep. She'd heard it. She always did. Have you ever been stuck with someone emotionally, before you were ready to speak your truth? Comment your storm moment. Sometimes, stillness brings the loudest breakthroughs. The morning after the storm, Lexington emerged soaked and shivering. Tree limbs littered sidewalks. Power was still out in half the neighborhood. But the sun had returned, low and gold, like it was trying to apologize. Joanna brewed instant coffee over a gas stove, humming softly under her breath. Daniel watched from the living room, his chair angled toward her like always. You're humming, he said. Old habit. She smiled faintly. Storms make me think of my mom. She used to hum whenever we lost power. Said it was the only way to keep from crying. Daniel nodded, watching her closely. The lines beneath her eyes looked deeper this morning. Not from lack of sleep, but from carrying too much for too long. You ever talk about her? He asked. Not really. Why not? She hesitated, turned off the burner, sat down slowly. Because the last thing she ever told me was that love doesn't last. Daniel blinked. She said that to you? Right before she walked out. The words hung in the air like ash. Joanna Raines had grown up in a home where love came with volume, yelling behind closed doors, slammed cabinets, and apologies that never stuck. Her mother was beautiful, unstable, a dreamer with a suitcase always half-packed. Her father was a pastor who stopped believing in redemption the day she left. I remember watching her through the blinds, Joanna whispered, voice thin. She had her lipstick perfect, hair curled, purse on her shoulder. She didn't cry. How old were you? Daniel asked. 12. She swallowed hard. I ran to the door. I screamed. She didn't turn around. Daniel's heart clenched. He reached for her hand. I think that's why I stayed so long with the wrong men, she said. I kept trying to make someone stay, just to prove her wrong. She met his gaze. Until you. Daniel was quiet for a long time. Then he leaned back in his chair. Can I tell you something too? Joanna nodded. I used to walk fast. Really fast. Drove people crazy. A faint smile. Didn't like to sit still. And now, she asked gently. Now I have to. His tone turned darker. But the truth is, I drove that night because I didn't want to talk to my dad. Joanna straightened. I thought the accident was an icy road. It was. But it was also me. Angry. Stupid. Proud. He looked down at his hands. We fought. He said I was wasting my life. I wanted to prove him wrong. Took off in the storm. Lost control before I hit the bridge. Joanna placed a hand over his. Does he know you're okay? Daniel's jaw tightened. He hasn't called. Not once. Not after the hospital. Not after the video. Nothing. Joanna's eyes filled. I'm so sorry. I think he meant what he said. What was it? Daniel hesitated. Then, softly. That a man who can't walk can't lead. The house was quiet. The coffee had gone cold. Joanna stood and walked to the cabinet. She pulled down a tin. Opened it. Inside, a faded photo of her mother. A letter. And a bracelet, worn, silver, engraved. She held it out. I've kept this since she left. Every time I doubted myself, I'd hold it. Daniel took it. Turned it over. What's it say? She whispered. Stay. Even when it's hard. The meaning behind that phrase landed with a thud between them. Because staying had never been Joanna's legacy. Or Daniel's family strength. But maybe, just maybe, it could be their beginning. Later that afternoon, Daniel rolled toward the front porch. Joanna followed. Together, they sat in the quiet sun, shoulder to shoulder. You ever think we're just trying to fix our parents through each other? He asked. Joanna smiled faintly. Probably. Is that bad? She looked at him. No. I think it means we're trying. Daniel looked out over the broken branches and wet roads. What if I'm never more than this? He asked suddenly. You're already more than anyone ever gave you credit for. He turned to her. Even you. Even me, she whispered. Is there a part of your past you've never told anyone, but it shaped who you became? If you're comfortable, share in the comments. Your truth might help someone else unlock theirs. The next few days passed with quiet gestures that said more than full-blown apologies ever could. Joanna refilled Daniel's water glass before he asked. Daniel reached the high shelf for her. His arms were strong enough to balance even from the chair. They didn't talk about love. Or loss. Or fear. They just did. Sometimes, that's enough. It was Tuesday when the power came back. The TV blinked on. The fridge groaned to life. Joanna stood barefoot on the cool kitchen tile and laughed. Not because of the light, but because she hadn't realized how quiet they'd both gone without it. We survived, she said, half smiling. Barely, Daniel grinned. I was one boiled peanut away from losing my mind. She snorted. You hate peanuts. Exactly. He looked at her, really looked. You should laugh more. I miss that sound. Her smile wavered, then bloomed wider. Then make me. So he did. That afternoon, Daniel suggested they go through an old box of Joanna's childhood mementos she'd been avoiding for months. They sat on the living room floor, Joanna cross-legged, Daniel in his chair angled toward her like a sunbeam. Out came photo albums. A bent tiara from a long-ago Halloween. A stack of letters she never sent to her mom. You wrote to her? Daniel asked softly. For years, Joanna admitted. I just never had an address. Daniel touched her knee. Said nothing. The quiet was understanding. Then, he held up an old drawing. Is this supposed to be a horse? It's a dragon. Looks like a mop with legs. Joanna laughed so hard she nearly toppled backward. You're the worst, she gasped. And yet you married me. Must have been the pity. They both stopped, then looked at each other, and burst out laughing again. The tension broke like sun through storm clouds. That night, they cooked together. Well, Joanna cooked. Daniel DJ'd from his phone. "Wait, you know Etta James?" she asked, spinning with a spatula. "Ma'am," he said deadpan, "I was raised right." They slow danced in the kitchen, Daniel sitting, Joanna kneeling beside him, her head on his chest. No one watching. No need to prove anything. Just two hearts sinking to the same rhythm again. Later, curled up on the couch, Joanna asked, "What do you think makes a marriage last?" Daniel thought for a long time. Being honest. Even when it's ugly. And laughing. Even when it's not funny. That's it. And pancakes, he added. Definitely pancakes. She laughed. Then her voice grew quiet. "I don't want a perfect life. I want this. Messy. Real. You." Daniel cupped her cheek. "You've had me since the poetry books, Joe. You remember that? You were wearing a bookstore apron and scolding a copy of Neruda for being too dramatic. I fell in love in 7 seconds." She blinked, teary. "You never told me that. You never asked." They kissed softly, no fireworks, no sweeping music, just warmth. And presence. The next morning, Daniel surprised her. He rolled into the bedroom holding something in his lap. A folder. "I applied." "To what?" "Engineering certification renewal. Remote work. I want to build again. Not just survive." Joanna's hands flew to her mouth. "Daniel. I want to build a life with you. Not just exist in it." She lunged forward, hugging him so tight his glasses nearly flew off. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "I'm finally proud of me too," he whispered back. Here comes the most emotionally intense part of the story. The moment everything nearly breaks beyond repair. It happened the night before Daniel's first remote interview. The house was still, the air unusually sharp with nerves. Joanna had laid out his shirt, crisp, sky blue, and checked his camera lighting twice. She kissed his forehead and whispered, "You're going to be incredible." He smiled, but his jaw clenched. "What if I bomb it?" "You won't." "And if I do?" "Then we try again." "Easy for you to say," he muttered. She blinked. "What's that supposed to mean?" He didn't answer. Just wheeled past her toward the den. It should have ended there, just a tense moment born from stress. But the truth was, neither of them had fully healed. Daniel still carried a deep-seated fear that everything good in his life would eventually leave. That he was still a risk Joanna didn't fully see. Joanna still harbored guilt, for sometimes wanting a simpler life. For sometimes wondering what could have been, not instead of Daniel, but before him. That night, those wounds collided. It started with a small thing. Joanna, nervous and tired, said, "If it doesn't work out, there are other paths. You don't have to prove anything." Daniel froze. "So you do think I'm trying to prove something?" "No, Daniel, that's not what I meant." "But it's what you said." Joanna's eyes flared. "I'm trying to help." "You're trying to rescue me again." "That's not fair." "Isn't it? I fall, you catch. I break, you glue. That's our whole relationship, right?" She stepped back like he'd slapped her. "Is that really how you see me?" "I see you exhausted, Joe. Always giving. And me just, here." Her voice shook. "Do you think I regret you?" "I think sometimes you wonder if love was enough." Joanna's breath caught. Because she had. In her weakest moments. And he knew. The argument exploded then, raw, bitter, unfiltered. "You think I don't wish we had it easier?" she cried. "That I don't sometimes look at couples walking hand in hand and wonder what that life would have felt like?" Daniel flinched. "So leave." "What?" "If this isn't the life you wanted, leave." "Don't say that. You promised me forever." "Forever with someone like me is a prison, Joe." "No. Forever with someone who stops fighting for us is a betrayal." The silence that followed was thick. Ugly. Final. Daniel turned his chair toward the hallway. "I need air." Joanna's lips trembled. Then go. But don't expect me to be here when you come back. He didn't go far. Just the porch. But she didn't follow. Not this time. That night, Daniel slept on the couch. Joanna lay in their bed staring at the ceiling fan again, this time spinning too fast, too loud, like the echo of every cruel word they hadn't meant to say. They were two people in the same house, but now it really did feel like different worlds. In the morning, the silence was worse than any storm. Daniel rolled toward the bathroom without looking at her. Joanna stirred her coffee mechanically, eyes swollen. The interview email chimed. He ignored it. Have you ever said something in pain that changed everything? Tell us in the comments, was it worth it, or did you wish you could take it back? The house was quieter than ever. The kind of quiet that comes after the storm has destroyed everything, and before anyone dares to look at the wreckage. Daniel didn't go to the interview. Joanna didn't ask why. They tiptoed around each other, sharing air but not breath. They passed in the kitchen like strangers in a foreign city. Every sound, drawer closing, water boiling, felt louder in the absence of words. It had been 2 days since the fight. 2 days since she'd told him not to come back. 2 days since he hadn't left. Daniel sat on the porch that afternoon, wheels still, shoulders hunched. The autumn breeze ruffled the leaves around his chair, carrying the scent of damp earth and regret. He stared at the cracked cement. The same one he dragged himself across to save a child. The same one that now felt impossible to cross, back into her arms. Inside, Joanna stood at the window, watching him. Not because she was angry, but because she was scared. What if she was wrong about them? What if forever was just a word people said when they were young and hopeful? What if love, no matter how deep, couldn't hold them together after all? That night, Daniel stayed in the guest room. But at 2:11 a.m., something shifted. Joanna opened their bedroom door and stepped into the hallway, her bare feet brushing the cool wood. She walked slowly, like the floor might give way beneath her. She found him sitting on the edge of the bed, fully dressed, eyes red. He didn't look up. I was going to leave, he said softly. Right after sunrise. Joanna's heart caught. Why? She whispered. Because I don't want to be the reason you wake up sad. A long silence. Then her voice, brittle. And you think leaving would make me happier? He finally looked up. I think I've spent so much time believing I was a burden that I started acting like one. Joanna stepped closer, but not all the way. Do you remember what I said at our wedding? Every word. Then tell me the part about what I promised you. His voice cracked. You said, even on the days you don't believe in yourself, I'll believe for both of us. Her chin trembled. That still counts, Daniel. Even after what I said? Especially after what you said. She knelt in front of him, eyes wet but steady. You don't have to leave. You just have to let me stay. He lowered his head. I hurt you. And I hurt you. But if this is what marriage is, loving through the mess, through the silence, through the almost walkouts, then I still choose it. Even now. Especially now. He reached out, took her hand. Do you think we can fix it? She leaned into him. I don't want to fix it. I want to grow something new. What made you stay when it would have been easier to leave? Tell us in the comments. Your strength might inspire someone else who's hurting right now. 1 month later. The sun was setting in Lexington, brushing the sky in amber and peach. From the porch, you could hear kids laughing, someone mowing a distant lawn, and a church bell tolling the hour. Joanna and Daniel sat side by side again, her legs curled beneath her, his chair reclined just slightly. There was a peace in the space between them now. Not because everything had been resolved, but because they had learned how to live inside the questions. Daniel had taken the interview. Nervous, fumbling at times, but honest. He got the offer a week later. Remote work. Full-time. Full benefits. His face when he read the email? Joanna cried harder than he did. They began renovating the guest room into a shared office. Daniel insisted on installing every shelf himself. His hands were still steady. His mind, sharper than ever. He even built her a reading nook. When she asked why, he said, because when you're happy, you hum. And I want more of that sound in this house. They returned to the same park where he had saved the boy, now with less of a crowd and more of a memory. Daniel wheeled himself toward the popcorn stand and bought 2 bags. He spilled half of his into her lap on purpose. "Oops," he said. "Smooth. You knew who I was when you married me." She smiled, brushing popcorn off her shirt. "I thought I did. Turns out you're even better." Later, sitting under an oak tree, Joanna pulled something from her bag. It was the silver bracelet. She slipped it onto his wrist this time. He looked at it, then her. "Stay. Even when it's hard," he read. She nodded. "I've never meant anything more." He didn't say anything back. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small navy box. Joanna blinked. "Daniel." "Don't worry, I'm not asking again." He smirked. "Just upgrading." Inside was a ring. Sleek, silver, with a single line engraved. "You stayed." Her breath hitched. "So did you." They kissed then. Not because it was dramatic. Not because anyone watched. But because it was theirs. Later that week, a woman from the grocery store stopped Joanna by the produce aisle. She smiled and said, "I saw your husband again. He was helping some teenager fix their tire. You married a good one." Joanna smiled. "Yeah, I did." The woman grinned wider. "People said you were crazy. But love like that ain't crazy. That's rare." A few days later, Daniel received a handwritten letter. It was from the boy's mother. Inside was a photo of the boy holding a drawing, him and Daniel, side by side. Daniel sat in silence, staring at the picture for a long time. Then he passed it to Joanna. He drew the chair too. She smiled. "Because he sees you. All of you." Daniel's eyes welled, but he didn't look away this time. "For the first time in my life," he whispered, "I feel like I do too." That night, curled up in bed, Joanna asked, "Do you still wonder if I settled?" Daniel exhaled. "No. Why not?" He turned toward her, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "Because I finally understand. You didn't marry me in spite of the chair." "No. You married me, with the chair. With the pain. With the stubbornness. With everything." She nodded, eyes shining. "And I'd choose you again. In any life." What does love look like when it's real? Not perfect, not poetic, just real. Share your version of love in the comments. The world needs your definition, not the movies. A year later. A backyard barbecue. Joanna laughing with her goddaughter, sauce on her cheek. Daniel grilling from a specially built station, teasing his best friend over a burnt hot dog. The table is covered in mismatched plates, stories, warmth. Someone walks by and whispers, "That's the couple from the video." And someone else answers, "Yeah, that's them. Still together." And Joanna looks across the yard and sees Daniel watching her, his chair parked in the sunlight, eyes soft, the silver bracelet still on his wrist. He mouths 3 words. She doesn't need to hear them. She knows.
Thank you so much for watching this video to the end. If you enjoyed this one, you will surely enjoy the next one. So click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next story. And don't forget to subscribe for more.